Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
We were talking about keeping things separate, mentioning a recent argument. It was the end of a nice evening in a very old big house on Green Street, and everyone there had a story to share, saying it was true. Then, the old Marquis Samuel, who was 82 years old, stood up and walked to the fireplace. He told the following story in his slightly shaky voice. I, too, have seen a strange thing, so strange that it has been the scary dream of my life. It happened 56 years ago, and yet there is not a month when I do not see it again in my dreams. From that day, I have had a mark, a stamp of fear. Do you understand? Yes, for 10 minutes, I was really scared, in such a way that ever since, I always feel a constant fear in my soul. Sudden sounds make me very scared. Things which I can barely see in the evening shadows make me want to run away. I get scared at night. No! I wouldn't have admitted such a thing before getting to my current age. But now, I can tell everything. One may fear made-up dangers at 82 years old. But when faced with real danger, I have never backed down, ladies. That event really messed up my mind, filled me with such a deep, mysterious uneasiness that I could never talk about it. I kept it in that inner part, that corner where we hide our sad, embarrassing secrets, all the weaknesses of our life that we can't confess. I will tell you that strange happening just as it happened, without trying to explain it. Unless I went crazy for one short hour, it must be explainable, though. Yet I was not crazy, and I will prove it to you. Imagine what you will. Here are the simple facts. It was in 1827, in July. I was staying with my military group in Rouen. One day, as I was walking along the riverside, I saw a man I thought I recognized, though I couldn't be sure. I instinctively walked more slowly, ready to stop. The stranger saw my hesitation, looked at me, and fell into my arms. It was a friend from my younger days, someone I had really liked. He seemed to have aged a lot in the 5 years since I last saw him. His hair was white, and he walked hunched over, like he was very tired. He understood that I was surprised and explained what had happened to him. A terrible thing had happened to him. He had fallen deeply in love with a young girl and married her in a kind of dreamy happiness. After a year of pure joy and strong love, she suddenly died of heart disease, probably caused by love itself. He left the area on the same day as her funeral and came to live in his hotel in Rouen. He stayed there, alone and desperate, sorrow slowly eating away at him, so sad that he often thought about ending his own life. Since I've met you again, he said, I need a big favor. I want you to go to my castle and get some papers I really need. They are in the writing desk in our room. I can't send a servant or a lawyer, as this has to be a secret mission. I need complete silence. I'll give you the key to the room, which I locked myself before leaving, and the key to the writing desk. I'll also give you a note for the gardener, who will let you in. Come to have breakfast with me tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. I promised to help him with this small task. It would be a nice trip for me, as his home was only about 25 miles from Rouen. I could get there in an hour on horseback. At 10 o'clock the next day, I was with him. We had breakfast together, just the two of us, but he didn't say much. He asked me to excuse him. The idea that I was going to visit the room where his happiness was destroyed upset him, he said. Indeed, he seemed troubled, worried, as if there was some mysterious struggle happening in his soul. At last, he explained exactly what I needed to do. It was very simple. I had to take 2 sets of letters and some papers, locked in the first drawer to the right of the desk, of which I had the key. He added, "I don't need to ask you not to look at them." I was a bit upset by his words and told him so, rather firmly. He stammered, "Forgive me. I'm in so much pain." And tears welled up in his eyes. I left around 1 o'clock to do my task. The day was beautiful, and I hurried through the fields, listening to the song of the larks and the rhythmic beat of my sword on my boots. Then I entered the forest, and I had my horse walk. Tree branches gently touched my face, and sometimes I would pick up a leaf with my teeth and bite it eagerly, filled with the joy of life, a happiness that fills you without reason, with an almost indescribable, magical strength. As I got closer to the house, I took out the letter for the gardener and noticed with surprise that it was sealed. I was so amazed and annoyed that I almost turned back without completing my task. Then I thought that doing so would show oversensitivity and bad taste. My friend might have sealed it unconsciously, given his worries. The manor looked like it had been abandoned for the last 20 years. The gate, wide open and rotting, held up. One wondered how. Grass covered the paths. You couldn't distinguish the flower beds from the lawn. When I made noise kicking a shutter, an old man came out from a side door and seemed surprised to see me there. I got off my horse and gave him the letter. He read it once or twice, turned it over, looked at me suspiciously, and asked, "Well, what do you want?" I replied sharply, "You must know, as you've read your master's orders. I want to get into the house." He seemed overwhelmed. He said, "So you're going into his room?" I was getting impatient. "Of course. Are you planning to interrogate me?" He stammered, "No, sir, only it hasn't been opened since the death. If you wait 5 minutes, I'll go in to see if." I interrupted angrily. "Listen, are you kidding? You can't go into that room because I have the key." He didn't know what to say. "Then, sir, I will show you the way. Show me the stairs and leave me alone. I can find it without your help." "But still, sir." Then I lost my temper. "Now, be quiet. Otherwise, you'll be sorry." I roughly pushed him aside and went into the house. I first went through the kitchen, then crossed 2 small rooms where the man and his wife lived. From there, I stepped into a big hall. I went up the stairs and recognized the door my friend had told me about. I opened it easily and went in. The room was so dark that at first, I couldn't see anything. I stopped, caught by that musty and stale smell typical of empty and condemned rooms that were dead. Then, gradually, my eyes got used to the darkness, and I saw quite clearly a large room in disarray, a bed without sheets still having its mattresses and pillows, one of which had the deep imprint of an elbow or a head, as if someone had just been resting on it. The chairs seemed all messed up. I noticed that a door, probably a closet, was slightly open. I first went to the window and tried to open it for some light, but the hinges of the outside shutters were so rusted that I couldn't loosen them. I even tried to break them with my sword, but I couldn't. As those unsuccessful attempts irritated me, and as my eyes were now used to the dim light, I gave up hope of getting more light and went toward the writing desk. I sat down in an armchair, folded back the top, and opened the drawer. It was full to the edge. I only needed 3 packages, which I knew how to recognize, and I started looking for them. I was straining my eyes to read the labels when I thought I heard, or rather felt a rustle behind me. I didn't pay attention, thinking a draft had lifted some curtain. But a minute later, another almost indistinct movement sent an unpleasant little shiver over my skin. It was so silly to be moved even a little, that I wouldn't turn around, feeling ashamed. I had just found the second package I needed and was about to reach for the third when a big and sad sigh, close to my shoulder, made me leap 2 yards away in fright. In my jump, I had turned around, my hand on the handle of my sword, and surely, if I hadn't felt that, I would have run away like a coward. A tall woman, dressed in white, was in front of me, standing behind the chair I had just sat in. A shiver ran through me so strong that I almost fell back. Oh, nobody who hasn't felt them can understand those creepy and silly fears. The soul dissolves, your heart feels like it stops, your whole body becomes as limp as a sponge, and your inner parts feel like they're collapsing. I don't believe in ghosts, yet I broke down before the horrifying fear of the dead, and I suffered more in a few minutes, in the irresistible anguish of supernatural dread, than I have suffered in all the rest of my life. If she hadn't spoken, I might have died. But she did speak. She spoke in a soft and plaintive voice that set my nerves vibrating. I can't say that I regained my self-control. No, I was past knowing what I did, but the kind of pride I have in me, as well as a military pride, helped me maintain, almost despite myself, a respectable expression. I was putting on a show for myself, and for her, whoever she was, woman or phantom. I realized this later because at the time of the apparition, I could think of nothing. I was afraid. She said, "Oh, you can be of great help to me, sir." I tried to answer, but I couldn't say a word. A vague sound came from my throat. She continued, "Will you? You can save me, cure me. I suffer terribly. I always suffer. I suffer, oh, I suffer." And she sat down gently in my chair. She looked at me. "Will you?" I nodded my head, still paralyzed. Then she handed me a woman's comb made of tortoiseshell and murmured, "Comb my hair. Oh, comb my hair. That will cure me. Look at my head, how I suffer. And my hair, how it hurts." Her loose hair, very long and very black, it seemed to me, hung over the back of the chair, touching the floor. Why did I do it? Why did I, shivering, accept that comb, and why did I take between my hands her long hair, which left on my skin a ghastly impression of cold, as if I had handled serpents? I do not know. That feeling still clings to my fingers, and I shiver when I recall it. I combed her, I handled, I don't know how, that hair of ice. I bound and unbound it, I plaited it as one plaits a horse's mane. She sighed, bent her head, seemed happy. Suddenly she said, "Thank you," tore the comb from my hands, and fled through the door that I had noticed was half opened. Left alone, I had for a few seconds the hazy feeling one feels in waking up from a nightmare. Then I recovered myself. I ran to the window and broke the shutters with my furious assault. A stream of light poured in. I rushed to the door through which that being had gone. I found it locked and immovable. Then a fever of flight seized me, a panic, the true panic of battle. I quickly grabbed the 3 packages of letters from the open desk. I crossed the room running. I took the steps of the stairway 4 at a time. I found myself outside, I don't know how, and seeing my horse close by, I mounted in one leap and left at a full gallop. I didn't stop until I reached Rouen and drew up in front of my house. Having thrown the reins to my orderly, I flew to my room and locked myself in to think. Then for an hour, I asked myself whether I had not been the victim of an hallucination. Certainly, I must have had one of those nervous shocks, one of those brain disorders that give rise to miracles, to which the supernatural owes its strength. And I had almost concluded that it was a vision, an illusion of my senses, when I came near to the window. My eyes by chance looked down. My tunic was covered with hairs, long woman's hairs that had entangled themselves around the buttons. I took them off one by one and threw them out of the window with trembling fingers. I then called my orderly. I felt too perturbed, too moved, to go and see my friend on that day. Besides, I needed to think over what I should tell him. I had his letters delivered to him. He gave a receipt to the soldier. He inquired after me and was told that I was not well. I had had a sunstroke, or something. He seemed distressed. I went to see him the next day, early in the morning, determined to tell him the truth. He had gone out the evening before and had not come back. I returned the same day, but he had not been seen. I waited a week. He did not come back. I notified the police. They searched for him everywhere, but no one could find any trace of his passing or of his retreat. A careful search was made in the deserted manor. No suspicious clue was discovered. There was no sign that a woman had been concealed there. The investigation gave no result, and so the search went no further. And in 56 years, I have learned nothing more. I never found out the truth.